And if this is your first time giving your mind a little love, I have a few goodies for you. First, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And second, sign up for the Morning Mind Love. Think of it like a weekday oracle from your highest self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, you'll get 2 gifts absolutely free: a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up. Welcome to Mind Love, episode 260. Today's episode is all about proven and effective ways to reach spiritual enlightenment.
There's thousands of cell radio frequencies going through our body. There's hundreds of radio transmissions going through our body. And if we have this thing called radio, we can pick up on those different stations, everything from preachers to rock and roll to beautiful classical music. Well, when we think of ourselves spiritually, we can think that we're trying to tune ourselves to higher frequencies that are around, just like all these radio stations are around. Some people tune into self-righteousness and some people tune into being a victim. But, when you get sick of those or you're bored with those, you might say, well, let me tune into love. How do you tune into the frequency of joy? How do you tune into the frequency of peace? Those frequencies are also all around us. You can tune into if you know the right method and you try some things to see what works for you.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
If this is your first time giving your mind a little love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Mind love is a habit, and the more you give your mind that love and intention, the better you'll feel about yourself and your life. Plus, it's really a win-win because more subscribers means Mind Love attracts even more amazing guests to bring you their wisdom. So don't forget to subscribe. Today, I'd love to share a review from Webster 1958. The title of the review is Always Interesting. I have been listening to Mind Love podcasts for a few months now. I always tune in, especially when it's a topic I don't know much about. The podcasts are always interesting and I always learn something new. Melissa makes it fun to listen to. Well, Webster, you make it fun to speak to. So thank you so much for taking a moment to leave this review because it totally lit up my whole week. If money were no issue and you could be anything, what would it be? For me, the answer is easy. If I could be anything, I'd be enlightened. And I'm working on it. I can't even count the amount of books that I've read or listened to or podcasts I've consumed, rabbit holes I've gone down, conferences I've attended. It's a lot. And I will say, for almost all of them, I experience at least a tiny shift, sometimes bigger than others. A few of my most life-changing teachers have been Paul Selig, Michael Singer, Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, and Joe Dispenza. But I've always loved a good story of enlightenment. Some stories of awakening and enlightenment sound like a combination of magic and a psychotic break that somehow miraculously leaves someone better than they were before. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe you have to break to rebuild. Like Eckhart Tolle, at age 29, he was suicidal. He could feel this longing for non-existence that was stronger than his desire to live. Well, he had a thought that kept repeating itself in his mind. I cannot live with myself any longer. And here's what he says about it. He says, then suddenly I became aware of what a peculiar thought it was. Am I one or two? If I cannot live with myself, there must be two of me. The I and the self that I cannot live with. Maybe, I thought, only one of them is real. I was so stunned by this strange realization that my mind stopped. I was fully conscious, but there were no more thoughts. Then I felt drawn into what seemed like a vortex of energy. It was a slow movement at first, and then it accelerated. I was gripped by an intense fear and my body started to shake. I heard the words, resist nothing, as if spoken inside my chest. I could feel myself being sucked into a void. It felt as if the void was inside myself rather than outside. And suddenly, there was no more fear. And I let myself fall into that void. I have no recollection of what happened after that. How incredible is that story? To just wake up on the other side of these intensely dark feelings and suddenly feel oneness and peace and love. Another great story is from the Buddha, whose birth name was Siddhartha. He was born into a royal family in what's now known as Nepal, and he was surrounded by privilege, so he didn't even witness other people suffering, things like sickness or aging or death. And when he did have his very first encounter with a sick elderly man, it was enough of a wake-up call to send him down a path of holiness, leaving his whole luxurious life behind. Well, he sat and meditated beneath a Bodhi tree, determined to find truth. And then he achieved enlightenment, becoming the Buddha. And then over the next 45 years, he taught his disciples, which were called the noble ones, to achieve enlightenment as well. So his was a little more simple. But I have a theory about that. I think back when the Buddha lived, I feel like the veil was thinner. And since then, we've built up these beliefs of separation and of what the world is, what things are supposed to be, that thicken that veil, that make it more difficult for us to access the other side. And a lot of spiritual texts I've read have talked about how centuries ago, the veil between worlds was thinner. Paul Selig's guides have said that now we're so caught up in our beliefs and our societal constructs that we created a prohibition of sorts. But this moment, in this day and age that we're about to live through, the prohibition has ended, which is why you see so many more people having spiritual experiences again. So yes, I believe that some things can break people open into experiencing the world in a whole new way. But usually, awakening happens a little at a time. I'll be introduced to a new way to approach something specific, like my thoughts, or anger, or past trauma, or healing, and it'll shift the way that I think about those things. Sometimes a new way of looking at something will just click, and I think about it differently the next time. And other times I have to put in a whole lot of effort to build a new habit of thought. And over time, I noticed that all of these little shifts have added up to a whole new way of approaching life. So the work is always worth it. But do I consider it enlightenment in the truest sense of the word? As though I've completely lost my sense of self and feel a oneness with all that is always? No, not really. I do feel awakened to things that I wasn't awakened to before, and maybe enlightened to certain truths. But I've got a long way to go before I'm an enlightened being, if that's in the cards in this lifetime at all. But I also believe that if the desire is there, then that is the path that my soul is here for, even if it takes a few lifetimes. And everything else is just a means to learn through. I like the description in Paul Selig's latest book, Resurrection. His guides say, to become awake does not mean you are more awake than the one beside you. It simply means that you are no longer obstructed by ideas of separation. And he says that whenever we have a physical body, we will have the idea of separation. But the difference is whether or not it obstructs us, whether it gets in the way of our joy and our happiness and abundance and peace. So that's the goal. The question is, with all of the courses and methods and books, what can actually help get you there? Well, that's what we're talking about today. And our guest is Jonathan Robinson. He's a psychotherapist, best-selling author of 10 books, and a professional speaker from Northern California. And he's spent more than 30 years studying the most practical and powerful methods for personal and professional development. His book, The Enlightenment Project, is all about proven and effective spiritual methods that bring inner peace to most people. So 3 key things we will learn are why enlightenment isn't as rare as we think it is, the foundational elements for a successful pursuit of enlightenment, and the top 2 most effective paths to awakening. Also, I have a special meditation just to accompany this podcast episode for premium members at mindlove.com/premium. We're going to focus on a loving kindness meditation, and you will hear in this episode why that is so powerful. So if you want access to that, join premium now. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. I need the right person with the right background who can actually move things forward, which is why I trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post even seen on other sites. Sponsored jobs boost your posts for quality candidates so you can reach the exact people you want faster. And it makes a big difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs because you reach a bigger pool of quality candidates. If I needed to hire someone for the podcast, I wouldn't want people who just think editing sounds fun. I'd want someone who's edited conversational podcasts for years, gets my style, knows the software. And with Indeed sponsored jobs, I'd get actual podcast editors who know what they're doing. Plus, you only pay for results. No monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts. And in the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results now with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/mindlove. Just go to Indeed.com/mindlove right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/mindlove. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed. And now let's welcome Jonathan Robinson to the show.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this, Melissa.
So tell me about how your search for enlightenment began.
Well, it began by having a highly dysfunctional family. And so I kind of had a midlife crisis around age 12 because I saw that I couldn't get out of my family and everybody was miserable and it was pretty violent. So I started to look for other ways that I might be able to escape that situation. And what I came upon was self-help books and meditation and hypnosis. So I luckily started this journey rather early because of that difficult upbringing.
Wow, that is really early. I was actually fairly early in my introduction of just sort of understanding that I had more power than I thought we did, than I thought I did growing up, but thanks to my dad. But I'm curious, what book do you remember first reading that actually got you to think like, wow, there's more to this life than I've thought so far?
Well, the first thing that got me to realize that was my uncle was a hypnotist and he hypnotized my normally shy sister to think that she was Mick Jagger. And she stepped up on a table and started belting out, "I can't get no satisfaction." And I said, wow, if you can change somebody's identity in 10 minutes, I'd like to be Mick Jagger or anyone other than my depressed, suicidal self. So I got into hypnosis and I read a book called Self-Hypnosis, but I also liked a book called Handbook to Higher Consciousness, which gave like step-by-step methods for getting into a more love, gratitude, and peace.
It seems like a lot of us that are on the path get a lot of what we believe or our teachings. It's not usually just one guru. We're finding bits and pieces from different people. And I know that you have studied different modes of enlightenment, different books. You have your own podcast, all sorts of better case studies than I've done. I tend to kind of go at everything at once. And so if somebody's like, well, what was the big thing that made a difference? I'm like, well, I was doing 4 things at the same time, so I can't fully tell you. Or you seem to approach it a little bit more scientifically. Over your research on enlightenment, whether your own journey or what you've learned from hearing other people's stories, what are some surprising things that you've learned that you didn't go into the search expecting to find?
Well, I've come to be surprised that I always thought that enlightenment might happen if you did like 40 years of spiritual disciplines, many hours a day. But when I've interviewed now over 100 spiritual leaders, everybody from the late Mother Teresa and Ram Dass to Adyashanti, Byron Katie, Deepak Chopra, the Dalai Lama, pretty much most people anybody would have heard, I found that it actually can happen very suddenly or quickly if you have a method that really works for you. So, most people are using spiritual methods from 2,000 years ago, either Jesus or the Buddha or something like that, Hatha Yoga, Vipassana meditation. But there are methods that have been developed in the last 2 years that seem to work about 100 times better. So there are people I know who literally found a method, never did spiritual work in their life, and within 3 weeks, they are persistently experiencing enlightenment. That's never happened before. That's surprising. So in my book, The Enlightenment Project, I tried to give like the greatest hits of the simple methods that seem to work the most for triggering either moments of enlightenment or persistent enlightenment.
The other thing that you touch on is that enlightenment isn't as rare as we think it is, because I think that is a block for a lot of people. I've interviewed spiritual teachers who straight up say there has only been a handful of enlightened people on the planet ever. The belief just isn't there with a lot of people. And we know that that's how it works with so many of our abilities, is that, you know, you see somebody break a 5-minute, then 4-minute mile, and then all of a sudden a bunch of people do it when it was thought to be not possible. And right now it does seem like we're at this brink where we're seeing a lot more intuitives coming into the world, or people with these psychic abilities, and also enlightenment. And so given that it's not as rare as we think it is, what should we actually expect from enlightenment? Because I think we do have that visual of those monks living in caves. What should we actually expect from enlightenment? Because I think we do have that visual of those monks living in caves.
Yeah. Well, I think the first step is to try out the greatest hits methods. You know, find my book or other people's books that have a list of the methods that science has shown actually work, rather than these 2,000-year-old methods. You know, nobody has a computer from 30 years. Why are we using spiritual methods from 2,000 years ago? That's one thing. But once you find something that works, you should, if you try it for a week, you should know, wow, that just blew my socks off. You know, I've tried maybe 70 spiritual methods. 50 of them did nothing for me. 20 of them, like, oh, that was interesting. And 5 of them, I went from a normal state to intense ecstasy in 5 minutes. Well, it doesn't take Einstein to figure out, maybe I'll go with those 5 methods that actually worked for me. So I think, though, at first you have to try a bunch of stuff and see what calls to you. Luckily, you know, because of the internet and podcasts like yours or mine, a lot of these approaches are coming available for free. When I interview people like Adyashanti or Byron Katie, I say, give me your best 10-minute guided meditation, the one that when people hear it, they just say, I can't believe what that did for me. That was amazing. And on my podcast, Awareness Explorers, I record all those and they're available for free. You know, so I have 100 guided meditations, awarenessexplorers.com for free. And you get to, you know, try it out and see what works for you. That's one way of doing it. And having that curiosity of exploration. You know, a tagline I use a lot is keep exploring, because you never know when something will make a difference. And there are a lot of people who are waking up very quickly nowadays that didn't happen even 15 years ago. So
if someone's in this pursuit of enlightenment, that's how they would know that this is a method that's worth exploring, when they might actually feel ecstasy within just a few minutes.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it. And, you know, there's not just ecstasy, there's peace, there's gratitude, there's joy, there's feeling like you have let go of your ego and stepped into the realm of pure awareness. So enlightenment really isn't just one thing. There's like many different types of enlightenment. And depending on what method you use, you can tap into these different types. So in a given day, I actually will experience 3 or 4 different types. For example, you know, most people have had moments of enlightenment, whether like being really present with a sunset or being in nature or making love, you know, but the key is to not have it be so dependent on externals, but be able to find that place within yourself anytime you want.
So say we're going into this is a goal. Enlightenment, we would love to experience enlightenment by the end of our lives. What are some of the foundational elements that you think people need for a successful pursuit of enlightenment?
Well, as I say in the Enlightenment Project, the first thing is that you try a bunch of the best stuff out there. And, there's courses, there's my book, there's various ways of finding those things, listening to teachers on YouTube, then finding what works for you, having a discipline of using that every day. Luckily I'm pretty lazy, so I'm not that disciplined. And so I specialize in methods that take under 5 minutes a day to do. But if you're disciplined, that's great. And some of the right ideas is like what you said, not having this idea that it's something I might someday strive for in the future, but it's more like changing my relationship with the present moment. So that rather than the present moment being just kind of a not that important thing or an inconvenience to get to somewhere better, you learn how to dive into the present moment in a way that opens up your heart to the vibration of love or peace. Like a radio, you learn to tune your dial to it. And that's really all that's required. You don't need to do years of all these other practices to get there, because enlightenment is basically a now experience. And we don't live in the future. So if you can change your relationship with now, well, you carry now with you for the rest of your life. So that's a good thing.
So a big part is changing our relationship with now. And you also say that at the heart of enlightenment is a shift in identity. And I know there's a lot of people that are listening to this that are all over the spectrum on this pursuit. Some may have been pursuing it for years. Some of them might have never even really understood what enlightenment is. So when you say there's a shift in identity at the heart, what do you really mean by that?
Well, right now, you might say, if I asked you, who are you? The casual answer would be Melissa, or I'd say I'm Jonathan. But beyond that ego personality identity, you could say there's a layer of us that might be called pure awareness, or your soul, or even a layer of identity that's pure love. We've heard this, and maybe we've even had moments of that in our life, a moment here or there. But enlightened people live in that experience. Their identity shifts from the character or ego people think they are to being just a presence of love, or being a presence of awareness. And they no longer really feel like the old character that they once thought that they were. They just don't identify with it anymore.
That's something that I am constantly working on. It's one of those things where when I look back over the last 10 years, I've been completely different people every time, while still kind of having the core of who I am in there. But now a main goal of mine is just identifying with less, because I find that my evolution can be more rapid if I'm not attached to who I think I am or what I think I need. But it's difficult. It's more difficult to do than speak about on a podcast.
Well, you say it's difficult, and I think I'm building a deck now. And first I had a hand saw, and it was really difficult. There's a lot of boards, and then I got a great power saw. So what used to take me an hour now takes about 4 seconds. And there are, in the same way, power tools that make it not so difficult to change your identity. I have methods I present in the book or to people I work with that they can at least have a glimpse of this pure awareness or pure love identity by doing a method for maybe 90 seconds. And once you find that there is something like that, your life changes, because you realize, this is better than TV. This is better than a movie. This is tapping into my true nature that's always there. I just now have a better way of doing it. And when you start to, just like a drug, you get addicted to it. I'm addicted to joy and love. I admit it. If there's an AA meeting for that, I would go to it.
It is true, though, when you think about how much time people spend on average just watching TV. It's the end of the day, and that's what they're used to doing. Yeah. And it's like, if you didn't do that, what else could you be doing? And it's anything from, depending on the type of person you are, you could be learning an instrument, you could be reading a book, or you could be working on ways to disidentify with self. And so we have more time than we often give ourselves credit for, and that time could be filled with different things. But what I'm even finding right now in my life is there was a long period of time where I had all of these dreams that I wanted to go toward. But honestly, by the end of the day, I was tired. So I'm like, I see why people will just sit there and turn something on and be entertained. And right now I'm going through something where I still feel that way. And also, I can't even turn on the TV because I'm bored just thinking about what to watch. Like any of the options, I'm like, that doesn't sound fun either. So there's like, I'm also pregnant, so I got to give myself that because the energy fluctuates. It's hard to get off the couch at certain moments, and I'm just not digesting food properly. But that's neither here nor there. But I'd love to get into some of these methods that you found the most helpful. But first, I want to ask, you gave some really powerful examples about setting an intention. And I think it's such an important thing to start with, because any course I've ever done, the first step is always that commitment, because I don't think people realize how half in, half out they are when they're like, oh yeah, let me pursue enlightenment or playing the guitar or whatever. And then they never do anything about it. And it's because there's not been a commitment. You haven't carved that time out during the day. But you gave this example of how that intention changes more than just your commitment level. And you talked about Men in Black 2, the movie.
Well, I'll share that story.
I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah. So I used to lead a group of students, and I would once a week or so show them a profound movie that was supposed to really affect them, things like Schindler's List or whatever. And I would have them write about what they learned from that movie and what effect it had on them. Well, one week I was going to be gone, so I gave what I thought was the movie Gandhi to a friend to show to this group. But in the DVD sleeve was the movie Men in Black 2. Have you seen Men in Black 2?
No, because I'm pretty sure all the reviews told me not to.
Exactly. Even Will Smith said you shouldn't watch this movie. Now, Men in Black 1 and Men in Black 3 were pretty good movies, but Men in Black 2 was particularly bad. So my group of students are all watching Men in Black 2 thinking that this is a very profound movie. And what they wrote up was that this movie was life transforming. It changed my opinion of this and that and really had dramatic effects on me. I thought they were watching the movie Gandhi, but so when I'm reading that this movie was so profound, that makes sense. Gandhi's a profound movie. When I found out they were watching Men in Black 2, I realized that a person's intention to find something profound or to learn in any given moment is much more important than what teacher they're listening to. So you can have the best spiritual method or the best teacher. It doesn't make a difference if you don't have an intention of, I want to learn, there's something profound here for me to get. So starting with a good intention, then I can say anything like, here's another funny story. Many years ago, a friend of mine came back from India and he felt totally grateful. So he's like beaming with gratitude. I said, what happened to you in India? He said, well, my guru gave me a magical mantra for feeling gratitude all the time. I said, that sounds pretty good. What's the mantra? He said, you got to get directly from the guru. Have you been to India, Melissa?
Not yet, but I want to.
Yeah. Well, it's a long way away. It's about 25 hours of plane travel. And then I took a rickshaw for 4 hours. I'm in line to talk to the guru for 3 hours. I'm kind of pissed off already. I just want the damn mantra. Anyways, so I tell the guru this, and he says in an Indian accent, yes, my mantra is the most powerful on earth. And he leans in to whisper it in my ear. He says, whenever possible, repeat these words. The mantra I give you for feeling gratitude is thank you. I look at him, I go, that's it? I traveled 20,000 miles to get thank you, that's it? And he says, no. That's it is the mantra you have been using. That makes you feel like you never have enough. My mantra is thank you, not that's it. That's it will take you nowhere. So I look at him and I say, well, thanks for nothing. And he says, thanks for nothing is not the mantra. You got to say it from your heart. So when you eat good food, say thank you. And when you see your child or a sunset or a pet, say thank you. And you'll be filled with gratitude. So I traveled all that way. I give it a try. So I get into a taxi, go to my hotel room, and the taxi had air conditioning that worked, which is unusual in India. And I said, oh, thank you, God, for this air conditioning. And then I get to my hotel room. There's a bottle of clean water. I'm very thirsty. Thank you for this water. I open up my computer. I mean, think of it. This computer is amazing. We get in contact with any information, all human knowledge, basically for free. And then I Skype my wife. I'm talking to my wife on the other side of the planet for free instantaneously. Thank you. And tears roll down my face. And she says, that must have been some mantra. And I say, you got no idea. That's, so it can be so simple of feeling your heart and giving thanks. I mean, once I was in an auto accident as a passenger, and one of the people in that car became quadriplegic. So when I wake up, I say, thank you for my arms. Thank you for my legs. Thank you that I can get out of bed. It doesn't need to be more complex than that. And there are a lot of methods like that, not just that method, that help you to tune into gratitude, joy, love, or peace. And some of them just take 5 seconds to do.
That is a great story. All those stories are great. I remember looking into transcendental meditation years and years ago. And before I ended up actually completing the transcendental medication program, I ended up interviewing somebody on my podcast. I won't name who, but she had her own meditation program. Mm-hmm. And it cost like $1,000 to go do her thing. I found out from her book that she gives people a mantra. And so I'm like, well, I'm interviewing her. It's a mutually beneficial thing. I'm going to ask her for a mantra. And she ends up saying like, no, I can't give you this mantra. It's kind of like giving you the keys to a Lamborghini without the tools to drive it or something like that. And honestly, I was a little disgruntled. I'm like, really? Mm-hmm. Like, you just start trying to make another buck off me? Like, I'm putting you in front of my audience for free type thing. Yeah. And a friend went through her course. She ended up kind of whispering her mantra to me. We did this trade. And then I end up doing transcendental meditation. I do get my own mantra. I do think it's powerful. And then I find like a thread on Reddit. And it actually talks about how it gives all of the mantras that are ever given in transcendental meditation. And somebody discerns that they give it to people based on age. And that's all it really is.
Yeah.
My mantra did not fit in my age group, but I saw my friend's mantra that she was given by this woman. I'm like, this woman just hijacked all the transcendental meditation mantras and now is selling them for $1,000. Like, but the funniest part is I was using my mantra and I was like, yes, this is powerful. But there was a moment in one of my meditations that I like let go of that. Like you're supposed to basically let go of the mantra, but a new mantra came to me. And since then, this new mantra that I've never heard of anywhere, that I don't think actually even means anything, is what I use all of the time. And my lesson from that is just how often we search outside of ourselves and we expect somebody else to give us the meaning or to give us the key to what we're seeking. And while all of those things have been powerful, depending on the person, how much of it is just the intention or the belief that this person has a power that you don't have and they're giving you a glimpse of it. And if we can tap into that power within ourselves, maybe we don't need it from somebody else. Maybe it's just right there waiting for us.
I agree. In fact, you can remember any high moment in your life, whether it be on psychedelics or nature or loving a person or pet, and think of like, what did that feel like in your body? What were you thinking? How did it feel in your energy field? And basically find your way back to that experience. These higher states of consciousness are much more available than people think. It does not require years of anything. It doesn't require even having any belief system. It really is a matter of finding your best way to get back to a place of peace, joy, or love within yourself. One meditation I talk about in the Enlightenment Project book, is just make a list of everybody you've ever loved or appreciated, and then spend a minute thinking about what you love or appreciate about them and feeling your love and appreciation towards them. Well, you do that, for 30 people in a row, you're like bathed in love. And what's better than that? You can't get a higher vibration than that. So, every day when I wake up, I spend about 20 minutes just bathing myself, inundating myself with love. And that's a good way to start the day.
And you were actually hooked up to a brainwave machine when you were doing this meditation and loving kindness meditations in general. I did an episode last December, and I read a whole book about the real scientific studies about loving kindness meditation. And for some reason, it blew my mind extra because there's so much in the spiritual world that sounds so woo-woo. And honestly, the combination of the words loving kindness has always just sounded woo. Like if you told me there's science on loving kindness, I would have been like, bullshit. But it's been studied a good amount, and getting into that state of just, even after a meditation, choosing to send out love or to bless other people. I've been going through a difficult week. And so right before this interview, I actually sat down and I'm like, the best way that I can use this 30 minutes is to actually just feel that loving kindness. And thank you. I was re-inspired by your book about how important that is. But it does really shift your energy. But you also talk about this analogy that you have to help explain what awakening is really about. Because I think in order to have these intentions, it's helpful to sort of have something that you can visualize or something to tune into. And you liken it to a radio. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, right now there's thousands of cell radio frequencies going through our body. There's hundreds of radio transmissions going through our body. And if we have this thing called radio, we can pick up on those different stations, everything from preachers to rock and roll to beautiful classical music. Well, when we think of ourselves spiritually, we can think that we're trying to tune ourselves to higher frequencies that are around, just like all these radio stations are around. And and you get to tune yourself in. Some people like to tune into domination. You see that in our politics. And some people tune into self-righteousness, and some people tune into being a victim. These are all frequencies you can tune into, which are very popular in this culture or this cult that we're part of. But, when you get sick of those or you're bored with those, you might say, well, let me tune into, how do you tune into love? How do you tune into the frequency of joy? How do you tune into the frequency of peace? And those frequencies are also all around us. You can tune into if you know the right method and you try some things to see what works for you. And I think that's a good analogy for how we grow spiritually. You learn to tune into certain frequencies and you learn to be very focused on that one frequency. So there's not the static of other stations bothering you so much.
I love that analogy because it really visualizes how we can be living in the same plane. And that's why so many of us are having completely different experiences. I mean, there could be two twins coming from the same family and one of them is elated and one of them's depressed. Why is that? There have been times where I've noticed that I am so much happier or so much lower, but nothing in my life has actually changed. And so it's like, what shifted? And so a lot of times that first step is really just the choice to choose something differently. And it's the experiments that allow us to kind of tune into different specific stations. One of the things that you talk about, and you actually shared based on a course that you took, but you talked about the 4 different levels of consciousness on the awakening continuum. What are those?
Well, as people have studied enlightened folks scientifically, they've found that enlightenment really isn't just one thing, that there's like 4 different types of enlightenment. Like you might say there's 4 different food groups. They're all food, but, ice cream is pretty different than broccoli. So, and the first one, a lot of people tune into for a moment where you just feel filled with love and peace. Your sense of identity hasn't changed, but you're having a really full moment. And the second one is more like noticing that everything is connected and you feel what they say in a lot of spiritual literature, that all is one, all emanates from this one love or this one awareness. Now, in the third type of enlightenment, you actually become that love. So you don't so much feel like a person, you feel like more like a walking presence of love. Somebody like a Jesus or somebody like that, or Mother Teresa felt like that when I connected with her. And then the fourth type of enlightenment is actually very different than that, where you're not in touch with any emotions. You're more like just a presence that feels totally peaceful, but there's no you. There's no sense of any character behind it. It's just like you just got here this second. That's a different type of enlightenment. And they're all good. They're all better than our normal mind-chattering, ego-centric self that tends to get us all caught up in problems and plans and dramas. It's nice to step out of that. It's kind of like there's two channels. There's a channel of duality, you, me, separate, everybody's separate. There's problems. There's all kinds of problems. But there's also this other channel, I call it channel one. On channel one, things are always good.
Yeah, what I love about your book and your experiments is that you really seem to have gotten something from all of the things that you've tried. And even to the point of exploring different religions, and some pretty deeply, where you've committed to them for a good period of time. And that always resonates with me because I was raised in one religion. I moved away from that religion, but I do feel like even the one that I moved away from, which for a long time I had some trauma around, honestly, because of just the dogma of it. But lately I've been called to go back and find the core truths, because there are. It's been around for a really long time. Christianity does have really good things about it. I'm glad I was raised with something, with some higher power belief versus none, because I think that set the stage for what I seek now. But I'm curious, with your exploration of different religions, what are some things that stand out to you that you got from particular ones? With your exploration of different religions, what are some things that stand out to you that you got from particular ones?
Well, certainly, at their essence, they have different approaches to finding inner peace and love. So Christianity is really the practice of love as a way to tap into the kingdom of heaven. Like that meditation I gave where you focus on all the people you love. That's really a Christian practice. And there's other practices that could fit into that category. Loving God, singing worship songs. These are all great things to do. Love is one great approach. The other major approach is what's called awareness-based approaches, which is really emblematic of Buddhism, where they use different techniques. But on the surface, you're using different techniques with different approaches. But if you travel these religions and practices, they all end up in a very similar place. So, when I met Mother Teresa, who was a Christian, and the Dalai Lama, who was a Buddhist, they felt very similar to me. They both emanated this kindness, this joy, this love that was just an honor to be in their presence.
Yeah, I've noticed the energy of people being palpable and then sometimes not at all. Sometimes people have very dense energy and you don't even really feel like that you can go near them. How have you felt your energy shift through this exploration?
Well, it shifted dramatically because I was, as a teenager, suicidally depressed. It's hard to remember that so much now, but I remember just trying to make it through a day without killing myself. Now, it's pretty different than that. First of all, there's not so much a strong ego identification with the character known as Jonathan. It's more like being a presence, like a kindly presence, is what it feels like. Now, I'm not enlightened either, but we all have moments of enlightenment or feeling lighter or more loving. And they're just easier to tap into. So I noticed that, I think of Jonathan as kind of a selfish guy, but the presence that I feel is very loving, very compassionate, and it moves through me, different amounts each day. And it's just become, part of how I live.
Earlier, you shared the loving kindness meditation. Super simple, basically just really bringing attention and getting specific about the people that you really love and holding that thought space. What are some of the other little activities that listeners can focus on for this week that can maybe shift them a little bit, whether it's just a little bit from what they were feeling before or possibly bigger shifts?
Well, obviously about 20, probably about 40 different methods are in the Enlightenment Project book. And also 5 of my favorites I give away for free on my website as an ebook. And these are ones that usually take less than a minute to do, that I find can shift people very quickly. I want people to have access to the best methods, so I give them away for free at theenlightenmentproject.net. And if you put in your email address, you get the ebook and audio meditation with those 5 methods. One of them, for example, is I call it the what else technique. So let's say you're involved in a story in your head that, how hard a day it is or whatever problem you have going on. You can ask, well, what else is going on now? Well, I feel my butt on the chair and it feels kind of warm. What else is going on? I look outside and leaves are kind of shimmering in the sunlight. Okay, what else is going on now? Well, I'm feeling my breath and how it feels good to take a deep breath. What else is going on? Well, I have an awareness that in this moment is aware of all these things at the same time. And I'm starting to feel a little bit of peace as I notice that. So that's a simple method. We talked about the thank you mantra, obviously. There's just imagining that you just got born. People can do it right now. Imagine you just got born and you're seeing the world for the first time. You don't know what anything means. And little babies, they don't have words. So what would it be like to look at things without words? Like you just got here. You'd see colors and you'd hear sounds. You don't know what they mean. And there's just like a wordless presence in this moment. And it's always here. But normally we're caught up in our head and thinking. But what would it be like if you just kind of moved your energy down to your heart and felt the world through your heart in a very silent, still way? And that can be a very simple method as well, that there's always a silent stillness happening in the present moment if we can become present.
Ooh, I felt that already. There's something powerful about even just bringing attention to your heart and visualizing it expanding. Mm-hmm. It's something that I didn't do my whole life until I did. And then it's like, what? That's always been there and accessible to me.
Where have you been my whole life? Oh, there's an old joke. God put peace and heaven inside of ourselves because she knew that would be the last place we'd look.
It's so true. I mean, that's really the basis of all of my spiritual exploration, is realizing that my first instinct is almost always to reach outside of myself, and the place that I always find it is inside. And sometimes it does take the outside tools for me to be able to tap into that better, but that's how I always describe the self-work. I used to have this expectation that I was going to get to this place of just peace and none of these things would bother me anymore, that I wouldn't be really affected by worldly problems. And maybe that's still out there one day, but what my experiences had led me to believe is that those things are always going to come. And the point of growth is building up your toolbox so that you have different things to reach for, and they're all already inside of you for different struggles. And it's like, this is what I'm dealing with now. I know this little 1-minute technique that can help me shift my awareness from me to other people, or from my problems to gratitude, or from this to that. And so it ends up becoming kind of this fun game. But there's one last thing I want to end on, because I found it really fascinating that your co-host has a book of awareness games, and it just sounded like a fun thing to play with. What's an awareness game that we can play this week between episodes?
Well, for an example of awareness game would be something like, well, what else is going on? I feel depressed. What else is going on? Well, I see outside it's a nice sunny day, like that. Another example of awareness game is you can imagine a whiteboard with the word I am, and then you think of what role you are, like I'm a man, and then erase man and just go, well, really, I just am an I am presence now. And then what other role? Well, I'm a psychotherapist. Well, erase that. Then I am. And then I am a American. You feel into that identity. Well, erase that. And then I am. That's a way that you can kind of let go of all these roles we think we are and just get back to, oh, really, I'm just a presence here, hearing sounds, seeing sights, And in this moment, everything's kind of okay.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you brought to this episode. Your book was one of those books for me that I just got sucked into and could not stop reading. And I think it's because it did touch on so many different ways. And so it's like every chapter I was playing with something new, and I had a whole method, it seemed like, given to me from that. So it's something that I could probably go through for the year and be like, okay, this is the chapter I'm focusing on for this week. This is the chapter I'm focusing on for that week. So for listeners that are interested in learning more about you, your book, The Enlightenment Project, and all of your other work, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
Well, for my podcast, they can get on any podcast app. It's called Awareness Explorers. But if they go to awarenessexplorers.com, they can get like 100 episodes or all these great guided meditations from all the great spiritual teachers of our age, all for free. I like to give out methods for free if I can. If they want my 5 favorite methods for free, they can go to theenlightenmentproject.net and put in their email address, and they'll get a bunch of stuff for free, including the first chapter of the book. So those are all good ways to also contact me if they want.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/260. Your challenge for this week is to pick one of these methods, but I'm going to give you a push towards the one that I felt the biggest shift with, as well as Jonathan, and it's the loving kindness meditation. So yeah, doing this meditation is not going to break you through to enlightenment, but the power of shifting your energy and holding that energy for long periods of time is enough to push you through progress a little bit. Even if it's just getting a glimpse of that peace place, the joy on the other side, that expansion of love that you have the capability to feel at any given moment. And it's simple, really. All you have to do is meditate on the people you love. To make this even more effective, I find it helpful to think of very specific moments. And so call those to mind by asking yourself, when does this person make you laugh? When did this person make you feel loved? And bring to mind those specific moments to where you can't help but smile. For years, and even now, I will use my first kiss with my husband. It was just one of those magical, we went on a sunrise hike. We had never kissed before, but we had been flirting for like 2 weeks straight, and I was sleeping over at his house, but we went on this morning hike, and we were at the top of this big rock on Castle Rock Trail in Big Bear, and I was cold, so he had his arms around me, and then he kind of turned me around and we had our first kiss. And there was just so much anticipation towards that moment that to this day, it can send me surging with love. So bring to mind moments like that, but moments that really help you to exude appreciation and love for another human being. And I have a gift for premium members. A new meditation will be up specifically for this episode that will guide you through a loving kindness meditation. So it'll make this process a whole lot easier. And if you're interested in joining Mind Love Premium, you can do that at mindlove.com/premium, where you get a whole backlog of episodes that are exclusive only for premium members, plus meditations like this, often accompanying different episodes, and early release and ad-free listening experience. So that's at mindlove.com/premium. If you love this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend. Tap that share button or take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram story and tag Mindlove Melissa and Mindlove Podcast. And you can also find all of my amazing sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. I'm loving my sponsors right now, especially Tanasi. I am a huge CBD fan, and I have gone down the rabbit hole on this company. And their patented combination of CBD with CBDA is a whole nother level of CBD. If you think you are a CBD fan, you've got to try Tanasi. It's been helping me sleep. This isn't supposed to be an ad. I'm just really enthusiastic about it. So find all of my sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.